What if the quietest part of your daily routine is actually helping create the internal conditions that cancer prefers as you move past the age of 50 and beyond? And what if the danger is not dramatic at all, but something very ordinary, sitting still for too long every day?
Movement isn't magic or a guarantee, but it can lower risk. Next, I'll explain the mistake, what counts, how to begin, and share a morning tip. I'm Dr. Thomas Schmidt, an oncologist who studies cancer prevention, metabolism, and risk. It's great to connect with you. Welcome. Today, I'm going to explain this in practical, easy-to-understand language. We'll break it down together. Now listen closely, because this could make all the difference in your health.
Fear or a diagnosis appear. It begins very quietly. One hard lesson in oncology is this. Many people think prevention mostly begins in the clinic. They picture scans, prescriptions, genetics, and frightening conversations that only happen after something already feels wrong. But risk often builds earlier, in everyday routines that most people were never really taught to notice. It builds through metabolic pressure, excess body fat, inflammation, hormone signaling, and a gradual weakening in the body's ability to repair small mistakes. It is also shaped by how effectively the immune system can detect trouble and by how often the body remains stuck in a state of low-grade activation. That background level of activation does not feel dramatic, but it changes the environment. That is the blind spot many people miss. After the age of 50, that blind spot matters more because recovery slows down and weight gain becomes easier. Long periods of sitting, convenient snacking, poor sleep, and delayed movement can quietly begin working together. Not just overnight or in a single week, but steadily enough to make a difference over the years. That is why I see daily movement as a practical prevention habit. That is why the habit I am talking about is not extreme exercise, but steady daily movement woven into ordinary life. Short walks, standing up for breaks, taking the stairs, running errands, and gentle forms of movement all count. In March of 2025, the United States National Cancer Institute highlighted research involving 85,000 older adults. That research showed that even light daily physical activity was linked to a lower risk of cancer. It also showed that the number of steps taken each day may matter more than exercise intensity itself. That should make us stop and think. Because this is not just a story about the gym, this is about what your body goes through hour by hour. When you sit too long and move too little, the body begins to adapt to the wrong pattern. Over time, that pattern may help create the conditions for insulin resistance, rising inflammation, and excess body fat. The American Cancer Society says that obesity, an unhealthy diet, and lack of physical activity remain major cancer risk factors, second only to tobacco use. Most adults have never been told this clearly, especially when they feel fine and assume that nothing important is happening inside. They think feeling normal means everything inside is normal too, and that assumption can be costly. The body can appear calm, while the foundation underneath becomes more favorable to disease. That is why daily habits matter so much after the age of 50. Many adults over 50 are not inactive because they are careless. They are tired, busy, sore, discouraged, and adjusting to a daily range of movement that keeps getting smaller. And once moving less becomes your normal state, blood sugar control, body composition, sleep, and energy can all gradually drift in the wrong direction. This matters even more if you are already overweight, sitting for long hours at a time, or constantly telling yourself that you will start next week. Cancer prevention is often quieter, more repetitive, and far more practical than most people imagine. Work pressure, family responsibilities, joint pain, poor sleep, and fatigue make movement very easy to postpone. So that postponement begins to feel harmless, normal, and easy to justify until the pattern becomes deeply rooted. A daily movement habit matters because it affects many systems at once, including sleep quality, metabolism, inflammation, insulin control, body composition, and recovery patterns. It can support insulin sensitivity, circulation, sleep quality, weight control, mood, and inflammatory balance. No, it is not magic, and no honest doctor would call it a guarantee. But it can lower risk and make your body less favorable to the conditions that cancer often takes advantage of. That is its real value. In just a moment, I am going to break this down clearly, without exaggeration, and without confusing medical terms. First, I will show you the common mistake that causes this habit to fail for many older adults. Then, I will explain what kinds of movement count, why it matters more at this stage of life, and how to begin. And near the end, I will share a quick 10-second tip that older adults can use tomorrow morning to make this habit easier to maintain. Most people hear the phrase, lower cancer risk, and think of one dramatic thing, one superfood, one supplement, one breakthrough test. But after 50, the more honest picture is usually quieter than that. What matters more is the daily environment inside the body. Cells are always receiving signals. Signals about inflammation, blood sugar, immune vigilance, repair, and recovery. When those signals stay chaotic for years, damaged cells get a friendlier place to survive. When those signals become steadier, the body becomes less welcoming to trouble. That is why this simple daily habit is not really one trick. It is one rhythm with 5 reinforcing parts, and the 5th layer begins in a place many people underestimate: morning hydration. Water is not a cancer shield. It is something more basic, and that is exactly why it matters. After 50, the sense of thirst often becomes less reliable. So many adults wake up slightly behind and do not realize it until they already feel tired, headachy, or oddly hungry. Then the day starts with coffee, a sweet breakfast, or nothing at all, and the body begins from a stressed position instead of a supported one. Think of it like starting a long drive with the dashboard already flashing low fuel. You can still move, but everything runs with less margin. Saliva is lower. Digestion feels slower. Bowel habits can get less regular. Energy dips sooner, and that makes convenience foods much more tempting. For adults over 50, that matters because cancer prevention is not only about avoiding one harmful thing, it is also about making it easier to follow the next good step. A body that starts the day underwatered is often a body that craves fast comfort by mid-morning. I often think about the person who says, "Doctor, I eat pretty well, but by 10:30 I am shaky and reaching for crackers." Sometimes the first correction is not exotic at all. It is drinking water before the first cup of coffee, especially if there is no medical reason to limit fluids. That simple act does not cure anything, but it changes the first signal of the day from catch-up to support. It helps the rest of the routine land better. Do you usually drink enough water? If you do, comment water below. So, the 5th layer is simple. Wake up, drink water, and do it before your appetite, caffeine habit, or schedule starts making decisions for you. Keep a glass ready the night before. Sip, do not chug. If you take medicines or have heart, kidney, or fluid balance restrictions, follow your own clinician's guidance. Then build breakfast on top of that steadier start. Even that small pause matters. It gives you one deliberate act before the noise of the day arrives, and it reminds you that prevention often begins with what supports normal function in your body first, not with what promises the most drama later. Because once the body is not beginning the day dry and reactive, the next layer has a much better chance to do its job. That next layer lives in the gut, and it is where many prevention conversations suddenly get more interesting. Now here is the belief reversal. Many people think cancer prevention has to begin with something expensive or highly technical. In reality, one of the most meaningful middle layers of this routine may come from supporting the microbial community already living inside you. After 50, the gut often becomes less forgiving. Medications accumulate. Food variety narrows. Constipation becomes more common. Sleep changes. Activity drops. Antibiotic history adds up. None of those shifts automatically cause cancer, but they can shape the microbiome and the inflammatory tone of the body over time. And that internal tone matters because chronic irritation and poor metabolic signaling create the kind of background noise in which damage can accumulate quietly. This is why the 4th layer of the same daily habit is not a miracle powder. It is regular fermented food in ordinary amounts. Plain yogurt with live cultures, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi. In a controlled NIH-supported study, people who ate a diet high in fermented foods had increased microbiome diversity and lower inflammatory markers. That does not prove a bowl of yogurt prevents cancer. It does show that fermented foods can push the inner environment in a more favorable direction, which is exactly the kind of modest, repeatable advantage we are looking for. A good metaphor here is a garden. If the soil is depleted, even healthy seeds struggle. Your gut is not a garden in a poetic sense only. It is an active ecosystem. The more stable and diverse that ecosystem is, the more orderly many downstream signals become. Digestion is steadier. Inflammation can be lower. Cravings may ease. And the rest of the routine becomes easier to repeat because you are not fighting your own body all afternoon. This is also where people go wrong. They treat fermented foods like a weekend health kick, a spoonful once in a while, a sugary yogurt marketed as wellness, a probiotic capsule with no real food change around it. That misses the point. The value here is not intensity, it is consistency. One realistic serving most days is more useful than a burst of enthusiasm followed by nothing. And if a food does not agree with your stomach, there are other options. The goal is not perfection. The goal is to make the inner terrain less inflammatory and more resilient. So if hydration is the opening reset, fermented food is the gut support layer that helps the day stay calmer from the inside. But a calmer gut is still not enough if the body spends hours trapped in a metabolically stagnant state. That is where the third layer begins. This is the layer many viewers resist because they think exercise advice always means a gym, heavy sweating, or one more standard they cannot meet. But cancer prevention after 50 is often shaped by smaller decisions than that. The third layer is metabolic walking, not heroic workouts, not punishment, just the habit of moving your body consistently enough that blood sugar, circulation, and muscle metabolism do not stay stuck. This matters because muscle is not just for strength. It is one of the main places where glucose gets used well. When you walk, muscles act like a second helper for blood sugar control. That reduces the kind of repeated metabolic spikes that can keep insulin high and inflammatory signaling active. And the evidence here is strong enough that we should speak plainly. The National Cancer Institute reported in 2025 that people with the highest total daily physical activity had a 26% lower risk of developing one of 13 studied cancers than those with lowest activity, and replacing sedentary time with light or moderate to vigorous activity was also associated with lower risk. That does not mean every walk cancels a disease. It means movement changes the biological climate in meaningful ways. I want you to notice something else. This layer is not only about calories, it is about oxygen delivery, circulation, and mitochondrial demand. When people spend long stretches sitting after meals, the body tends to process that meal in a more sluggish way. A short walk after breakfast, lunch, or dinner can help blunt that stagnation. For many adults over 50, especially those with rising waistlines or borderline blood sugar, this is one of the most practical anti-cancer habits they can actually keep. I have seen this click for patients who hated the idea of working out. The breakthrough was never a treadmill identity, it was a routine identity. 10 minutes after dinner, 5 after lunch, parking farther away, a lap around the block while a phone call finishes. Once movement becomes part of the daily rhythm, not a separate project, the body starts receiving better signals hour by hour instead of only once a week. So far, the pattern should be getting clearer. Water helps you start less reactive. Fermented foods help steady the inner terrain. Walking helps the body use fuel more intelligently. But there is a deeper layer still, because prevention is not only about handling today's inputs. It is also about what your cells are equipped to do with damage when it appears. This is where many people start expecting a dramatic reveal. A rare berry, an expensive extract, a secret compound hidden from the public. The truth is more ordinary, and that is part of its power. One of the strongest food layers in this entire rhythm is the regular use of cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, kale, bok choy. Not because they are magical, but because they contain glucosinolates that are broken down into biologically active compounds such as indoles and isothiocyanates, including sulforaphane. The National Cancer Institute notes that in laboratory and animal studies, these compounds have shown several anti-cancer actions, including helping protect cells from DNA damage, helping inactivate carcinogens, and showing anti-inflammatory effects, even though human evidence remains mixed. That is exactly the balanced message adults over 50 deserve. Promising, useful, not absolute. That balance matters. If I oversell broccoli, I lose your trust. If I undersell it, I miss a meaningful tool. The honest framing is this: cruciferous vegetables are part of a broader healthy eating pattern recommended by the American Cancer Society, and they offer a plausible cellular defense advantage that fits beautifully into a daily prevention rhythm. They are not there to replace screening, colonoscopies, mammograms, pap tests, skin checks, or medical care. They are there to support the body between those appointments. A simple way to think about this layer is that some foods mainly help you feel full, and some foods also help your cells manage the wear and tear of living. Cruciferous vegetables belong in that second conversation. They give the body raw material for defense and detox signaling. And because they are whole foods, not isolated hype, they fit real life. Add cabbage to lunch. Roast cauliflower with dinner. Stir broccoli into eggs. Put kale into soup. Variety matters more than obsession. Frequency matters more than a cleanse. But even this is not the master switch. Because a well-hydrated, well-fed, reasonably active body can still lose ground if repair never gets enough protected time. That brings us to the final layer, and in many ways the most ignored one. Sleep is where this anti-cancer rhythm stops, being a daytime checklist and becomes full-body recovery. Many adults over 50 treat sleep as leftover time. They protect appointments, television, chores, and family demands, then hand sleep whatever remains. That is understandable. It is also costly. The American Cancer Society says the research on sleep and cancer risk is still evolving, but some studies suggest risk may rise when the body's sleep cycle is disrupted for long periods, and quality sleep is known to strengthen the immune system. So while we should not claim more certainty than the science allows, we should also stop pretending poor sleep is harmless background noise. At night, your body does not simply go offline, it shifts into maintenance. Hormonal timing changes, immune patrol changes, appetite signals reset, tissue repair gets its window. If that window is repeatedly shortened or thrown off by late light, irregular hours, heavy meals at midnight, or constant stimulation, the next day begins with less reserve. Then, hydration slips. Cravings rise, walking gets skipped, the salad loses to convenience. This is why sleep is not separate from the other 4 layers. It decides how likely you are to repeat them. And this is the part I most want adults over 50 to hear. Prevention is not built only by adding good things. It is built by protecting timing. A body that gets the same basic bedtime, darker evenings, and a calmer wind down is a body that can use the rest of the routine better. Not perfectly, better. That is often how real protection works. Not as a miracle, as an advantage. Repeated. Here is the 10-second tip I would use tonight. Before you leave the kitchen, set out tomorrow's first glass. Place your walking shoes where you will trip over the decision, and choose 1 fermented food plus 1 cruciferous vegetable for the next day. Then dim the lights 1 hour before bed. That tiny setup takes seconds, but it turns good intentions into a visible sequence your body can actually follow. And that is why I do not call this 5 separate tips. It is one simple daily anti-cancer habit made of 5 linked signals. You start the morning less depleted. You calm the gut instead of inflaming it. You move fuel through muscle instead of letting it idle in the bloodstream. You give cells better defense chemistry from real food. And you protect the overnight repair window that makes tomorrow's choices easier. That is how ordinary actions become biologically meaningful after 50. Not because any one step is dramatic, but because together they make the inside of the body a less hospitable place for long-term damage to gain momentum. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, the message is not that one food prevents cancer or that one missed walk ruins your future. It is that, after 50, the body still responds to steady biological support. Hydration changes the opening signal. Fermented foods shape the inner terrain. Walking improves how fuel is used. Cruciferous vegetables add cellular defense support. Sleep protects the repair window that ties everything together. That is the journey we took, and the real risk was never just aging itself. The real risk was assuming that ordinary daily signals no longer matter. I also want to leave you with proportion. This is guidance, not panic. These habits do not replace your doctor, your screening schedule, or your treatment plan if you already have one. They do not guarantee prevention, and they are not meant to make you feel guilty about the years behind you. They are simply a realistic way to give your body more of what helps and less of what quietly works against it. So start small. Pick one part of the rhythm and lock it in this week. Put water where you will see it in the morning. Add a real fermented food you can tolerate. Walk after 1 meal each day. Put broccoli, cabbage, kale, or cauliflower on your shopping list. Protect a steadier bedtime. Small, repeated actions are often what preserve energy, independence, and quality of life the longest. That is how routines stop feeling like pressure and start feeling like self-respect, which is often the healthier frame for lasting change when life is busy and motivation is not perfect from week to week. Share this with someone over 50 who still thinks prevention has to be complicated. Subscribe if you want more clear, evidence-aware guidance in plain English. And comment with the one part of this daily rhythm you will start first. Thank you for spending this time with me. Take care of your body with patience, not fear. Stay consistent, stay curious, and I will see you in the next one.